Hello, my fellow chatterers and book lovers. And anyone else who's popped in because you're curious about what this is or you have got a bit lost, welcome everyone. I'm Chatty, this is my channel Chatty the Mad Chatter, and I am going to be chatting away madly about All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kiely? I think it's Kiely. Could be Kiely, but I'm going with Kiely. So apologies if that is incorrect. On this channel, I do not edit my long videos, so it is one continuous shot and there is no editing. So cheers. Clink, 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 clink. So I have decided to join in with MJ's 24 in 24 Reading Rebellion. So this is the banned books challenge where MJ is challenging everyone to see if can you read 24 banned books. I already know myself, I am committing to a quarter of that, so I'm half a dozening the half a dozen and going for 6. So I'm committing to reading 6 books because that is a much more realistic goal for myself because I have other goals and things that I'm doing. Anyway, so this is the first book that I have read for the banned books challenge, and I am going to be sharing what I love about this book, why I think it is a really important book, what I love about the writing and the author's story, and this particular copy I have got the illustrated copy from my library. Wonderfully, my library also had just a regular book and also this one, so obviously I went for the illustrated one because why wouldn't you want some pictures as well if you can get hold of them. So banned books is a very important topic. There is a lot of kind of like censorship going on at the moment. Libraries do a lot of stuff to try and counteract this with banned books weeks and banned books months. In the US, this is a week in September. Some people do it for the whole of September. Sorry, in the UK, it's in September, and in the US, it is in October. And I will be putting some links in for some articles that I found interesting while sort of doing a little bit more research as to why in particular All American Boys has been banned. But I want to start with the good part. I know it's going to make my display fall over now. Please don't die on me. It's already going. No! Okay, there we go. We've solved book damage. I was originally intending to start the video talking about why this book has been banned, but most videos on YouTube are you watch the beginning. So I would actually rather you went away with what the authors wanted to say about this book when receiving an award for this book. So this book I think has won 2 awards. It's winner of the Philip Carnegie Medal, and I believe there was another one as well. And also the Coretta Scott King Honor. And this is the speeches of both the authors from the award ceremony that I want to share with you now. So I'm going to start with Jason Reynolds, and Jason Reynolds wrote a piece of poetry called Machetes. So I'm going to read a couple of extracts from that. If you listen closely, you can hear the machetes cutting the air in half, connecting for half a second with something, breathing and growing before being chopped down like a sugarcane in a Louisiana field. Yes, there are machetes everywhere, the sound of them cutting the air. Chop, 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 chop. We try not to bend in the wind, try not to bow or bow, try to wrap fingers around our own saccharine souls and brace ourselves for the chop, 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 chop. The machetes cutting the air in half, coming for us. Seems like folks like us be best when we be broken open, when we be melted down, when we easier to digest. If you listen closely, you can hear the machetes. And it goes on through that. I don't want to read the whole thing because obviously it's nicer when you experience it yourself. But this is the direction it is heading into, and I want to leave you with these phrases. And in the sliver of silence between those chops, the clapping, clap, 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 the clapping of yester generation's freedom songs, protest warriors, unpopular opinions, uncomfortable confrontation, unhinging truth, clap, clap, and this generation's freedom songs, protest warriors, unpopular opinions, uncomfortable confrontations, unhinging truth. Hashtag, clap, 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 clap. And one of the lines from there that really sticks out to me is uncomfortable confrontation. And I think that is the reason this has been banned. You can talk about, you know, the reference to a drug or having a profanity word in the text, but it's because it makes people uncomfortable that this book has been banned. I'm now going to go on to read some extracts from Brendan Kiely's speech. So full context, Jason Reynolds is a Black author, Brendan Kiely is a white author, and they came together to co-write this book exploring these themes and this topic of systematic racism and events that young people kind of deal with it. Obviously not this particular circumstances, but you can switch the events into other things that a lot of people will relate to. So Brendan Kiely talks about how All American Boys opened conversations, and that was one of the things that they wanted for this book. And he goes on to talk about that it's important to be able to having these conversations with young people, and he thinks about all the young people that are missing, too many missing today, and they shouldn't be. And he goes on to talk about why Black Lives Matter is important, and his own kind of opinion of it coming from someone who is white. I have to first speak truth to myself. I live in the comfort of the privileged position of my identity. I want to call people who also live with any of those elements of identity into the space of discomfort, so that together we might do less harm as white people, as cisgender heterosexuals, as able-bodied people. And he goes on to talk about his mission being to join the revolution against complacency, bigotry, exclusion, and hate, the revolution against injustice, highlighting that this is not just an issue, and you can swap out Black Lives Matter to be any event about people being dealing with hatred and systematic injustice because of their sexual orientation, because of their gender identity, because of their disabilities, anyone that is different to the systematic structure, which is it's a white patriarchy, cisgendered, heterosexual, able-bodied norm, as he mentioned. And he also goes on to talk about how revolution begins in the heart. We have to have these conversations with ourselves. We have to be able to see these things ourselves and feel that anger and feel that pain before we feel compelled to do something about it. So everyone should be having these feelings, examining themselves and reflecting on the world. He's joined the revolution started by others and goes on to point out, you are giants I strive to walk with when I write. And what I really love in particular to the banned books whole idea of this is he wants to give a huge thank you to all the librarians and educators who said yes to this book, who said yes to getting it in the hands of young people who want to talk, who are ready to talk, who want to dig in because they have less of a stake in the world that is, and rather a much greater stake in the world that could be. And I think it's so important to be able to talk about. And I love how different both of those speeches are. I love that we get Jason Reynolds, who I have previously only read poetry from him, and I have really enjoyed that. I've read a novel and verse and a poetry kind of collection from him, so this was my first prose from Jason Reynolds. I love that we got some poetry at the end there, and I do think with poetry it's something you just want to read aloud. You want to be able to say the words, you want to find the beat, find the rhythm, and you can feel the passion of the voice coming through with that. So you feel that, you know, this is something that has changed over time, but the suppression is still there. It just takes a different format. And Brendan Kiely coming from it from a different point of view, from one of white privilege, saying we need to be part of this too. We need to be having these conversations. We need to be reflecting it on themselves. And like Jason Reynolds pointed out, we need to not just put things off because it's uncomfortable. We need to have these uncomfortable confrontations, because unless we can meet together and start this conversation, we're just going to remain in this status quo of just continuing misunderstanding, and hatred because of someone being different, and this fear that someone who's different to me could then suppress me instead of me them. And I think this is what this book is trying to tackle, and I think it does it really, really well. Obviously, I can only come from this from the position of a white privileged person. I cannot give you an opinion of someone who is black, who feels suppressed because of their blackness, who has suffered from feeling this fear that maybe people who are supposed to protect us do not see you as someone who is worth protecting. I cannot give you that opinion, so please do go and look at other booktubers who can give you the opinion of what it is like to read this book from that viewpoint with that personal history. I can only give you mine. So I'm now going to talk about why this book has been banned and give you sort of a short history on it before going into what I really, really enjoyed about this. So I'm going to pop it back here so I can give my arm a little bit of a break. In it goes. Standing up there. Lovely. So, got little notes and things here. So most of the information that I'm giving you, I will provide the link below should you wish to read it yourself. I'm just trying to summarize it as quickly as possible. But the most concise information I found was from the Marshall University about the book banning of All American Boys. And I have also got data from the American Library Association as well. And I also link a few other kind of articles about book banning for you to look at your leisure should you want more info. So the book was published in 2015 and in 2019 it was challenged in South Carolina by the Fraternal Order of the Police chapter in Mount Pleasant. Wando High School had it on their list of optional reading, and the Fraternal Order of Police chapter said that it should be banned because it is almost an indoctrination of distrust of police, and we've got to put a stop to that. The school retained the title and kept it on their reading list. But it's phrases and things like that. I don't need to go into detail describing what is wrong with that sentence, how immediately when something there's there we don't agree with, we immediately want to squash it and not look at it and not talk about it and decide that we're right and they're wrong. Rather than going, maybe we should come together and have a conversation. Maybe we should explore this more. Maybe we should look into why these ideals and feelings are there. No, we don't want things to change. Let's keep the status quo. Suppress it, which is quite a lot of the themes, I think, of all of the banned books and the censorship going on. So in 2020, and I don't think this will be a surprise considering the events and the big news with all of this kind of stuff came back to the forefront with the murder of George Floyd and the huge kind of like outcry of that, and another kind of more emergence of protests and march that were more widely shown. Obviously there are so many individual cases that have gone unshouted about by the mass media, but in 2020 the American Library Association has this as their from the data they've collected, All American Boys was the third most challenged book that year. So obviously hit a spot for some people. And in 2020 and 2021, the reasoning for the banning is the same. They start off by explaining that they want it banned because it has profanity. So it uses the word fuck in there. It's not overuse. I had forgotten that it was in there. I have not gone through and counted how many times it's in there because I don't feel that's completely relevant. When reading, I didn't feel, I am aware of when I can read language in books and it doesn't affect me. I know people feel differently about things. For me, it felt very much kind of like the tone of the character, kind of the language that they were speaking, and kind of the impact of how important that the thing was. The phrase was, did I write? I think I wrote it down somewhere else. Yeah, so if you really want to know, I found an example on page 82. One character just says, thinking about in his head, his brother he's sort of he's trying to talk to a girl and his brother is present, and in his head he's thinking, don't fuck this up, dude. And it's just used as a colloquialism thing. I do not think there's loads of bad language and things in this book. I'm aware of it when I read it. I think that could be the only one. There might be maybe 2 or 3, but not a huge amount of it in there. It was also challenged for drug use. A couple of times drug use is mentioned. It talks about marijuana from one of the white characters, saying that he has taken an occasional spliff. So in kind of like a partying thing, as like a cigarette, having marijuana instead of something else. So that was a mild drug use. You do not see it on the page. It is just referred to in the past context. And just highlighting, and it goes on to kind of like highlight how you can judge someone and think that someone is a drug user, a drug taker, because of how they look. And then actually that person has never touched them in their life, while you judging them have taken recreational drugs. So it's just highlighting how judgmental we can be, and that was the use of it. There is another conversation where they question whether people involved in the incident were on drugs and has that affected how they were, and they discuss again that it was unlikely for them to be, and again it explores that whole judgment thing. Those were the 2 incidences I can think of off the top of my head. I really don't think there was a lot of it. There's definitely no scenes depicting drug use or anything like that. Then it goes on to talk about there is alcoholism. Again, it is used as a minor thing in here. They talk about teenagers going for a party. One teenager takes some of his mum's whiskey in a hip flask to share amongst friends. So there is young people taking alcohol at a party. It's not a huge feature of the book, it's just setting the scene. But again, it kind of goes on to talk about and kind of compare judging of different characters. And another incident where they mention that one of the grown-ups, because of an event that happened into her life, one way of coping was on the reoccurrence of that anniversary. To help with her grief, she drank more than usual and needed to physically be helped home by someone and kind of taken care of. Those again are the only 2 incidences of alcohol use in here. So it's not a huge part of the story. So I think we get on to what the main reason for banning books is, when they describe that it promotes an anti-police view and it contains divisive topics, which is, this is quoted, too much of a sensitive matter right now. And it comes back to not wanting to have those uncomfortable confrontations. They don't want that. They don't want to deal with that. They just want people to like calm down, which basically means you want to ignore people who have this problem. You want to ignore what people are saying because the thought of having to look into that might make you feel uncomfortable. And that is the whole crux of this book. It is designed to make you feel uncomfortable, and that is the thing that characters have to explore and look at. They have to put themselves into uncomfortable positions because they cannot ignore what's happened. In 2021, it kind of goes on to talk about specific instances. So there was one in Maine, Rangeley Lakes Regional School District. A parent challenged the book and it was retained. In New York at Soahaka Central High School, the district put All American Boys on their summer reading list, and a parent objected. So some of the quotes from some parents objecting were, "Schools should be a neutral place where kids get to be kids and not a place where we train and brainwash new generations." So obviously having an opinion that is not yours counts as brainwashing, and anything that is not the social norm is propaganda. Heaven forbid we maybe sit around and have a conversation about something. And it goes on to say they don't want their son reading books where police are trashed and blamed for what's going on. So again, someone having an opinion, and this book challenging their opinion and making them maybe think differently. It does say that other parents praised the relevance of the book, and it was inconclusive what kind of happened in that situation. In Tennessee, Signal Mountain Middle High School removed All American Boys from its reading list after parents complained about the maturity of the language, and the high school did say they didn't think it was suitable for 7th grade, but it was high school reading material and the themes they were exploring were important. in Maryland, Somerset County Public School, said even though they had taught All American Boys since 2016 as part of their lessons, a parent challenged it because of its foul and vulgar language and its divisive topics. In 2022, North Carolina, Pitts County Schools challenged All American Boys, and it was retained. In Wisconsin, the middle school library in Raymond School District, it was challenged, and they had a committee of teachers, librarians, parents, and other members of the community come together to discuss the book, discuss people's concerns with it, and that committee decided it should be retained. But the school board rejected this recommendation and voted to ban it because of, and other books like it, because of racial slurs and profanity, and they removed it. So there we go. That is all of the history that I have to hand about why this book has been banned. And as much as people can talk about the profanity of the word fuck in the book, and I think there could be some, I'm not entirely sure what the middle grade of American high school covers, but I can understand how maybe some parents don't want their children reading books with those languages in it, and I think it comes down again to parental choice, and I think it also comes down to being able to think about how to have those conversations. And this is always a difficult topic with parents and parenting because everyone has different opinions, every child is different and has different maturity levels, but I think, you know, the important thing is to just have conversations, and at conversations when you know your child is ready, because if you don't have these conversations, then your child will look elsewhere for this information. And I think schools do a really good job of trying to create a safe space for these things to be explored and examined and looked at, so children can tackle these difficult topics, because there are, you know, events that happen in this book were all over the news. You know, they might even be in places in the school where they know these things happen, and it's really important to talk about it. And I suppose not entertainingly, but one of the things in this book is that you also talk about the teachers and how teachers handle the incident that happens. So we think all of this is really, really fascinating and really, really interesting. So I am going to move on now to talking about the book. But I think my basic conclusion about why this is banned is because people don't want to think about the topic. They don't like the topic. It makes them feel uncomfortable. They don't agree with it. They have an opinion, and they don't want anyone to have a different opinion to their opinion or to sit down and think about it themselves. And I think that is people's main problem with this book. Anyone who is scared of anti-police feeling and sentiment, who like to have the status quo left exactly how it is, they are not going to enjoy this book, because they will have to face some uncomfortable truths, and they will have to challenge themselves and maybe rethink how they look at things, and that's what I think this book does really, really well. So as well as the theme of this book, there are also some things in here that I really enjoy in terms of the artistry of the book. So the theme of this book, there is an incident that happens, and it makes people angry. There is an injustice. You see this from two different perspectives. You see this from the victim of the injustice, who is black, and you see this from an observer who is white, who knows the perpetrator personally. And it is that kind of conflict of both of these children having to go, well, young people, having to go on this kind of journey of self-discovery about who they are, who they represent, and what they want to, what feels right for them, what side of history they want to be on. And both characters have very different conflicts and very different journeys, which I will go into. If you do not want me to go into any further details than that, it will be, I'm not going to be doing like full-on spoilers, but if you like going into your books knowing as little as possible, I suggest you don't watch any more of this video, go and read the book, and if you want to come back afterwards, that'd be marvellous. Or go and look at a different review to kind of like have your therapy of feelings after this book. But I am going to talk a little bit more detail now. So I will be talking about the incident that happens very early on in the book that then sets the tone for the rest of the book. And I'm going to start off by showing you a picture because I got the illustrated version for a reason, and I think it really kind of like sends home just, this is basically an image of what this book is about. So we have black pencil shaded drawing here, and one of the most striking things I see is in the bottom corner is it looks like there is a pane of glass against the wall. We're given this viewpoint of being under the floor, and you can see the protagonist Rashad, who has been accused of thieving, which he wasn't, accused of thieving by like a police security guard in a corner shop, is being pummeled by him, and his face is just smushed up against the page, and it is just that you can see the fist connecting with his cheek, and just the pain on his face, and there's no fight back from him. He is a young boy being attacked by a bigger young adult, like a young man in a position of law and power, and who is physically bigger than him. And you can see this connecting fist, and then looming over him with this like look of hatred and anger on his face is the perpetrator of the crime pummeling him. And then further off in the background, just placed behind the fist, you can see the second protagonist, Quinn, who observes this and who knows the perpetrator. The perpetrator is the brother of one of his best friends. So having so that is basically the setup for the whole book. I also enjoyed that you have like what started the incident was Rashad going to the corner shop to get a packet of crisps before going to a party, and he kneels down to get his phone out of his bag to message his friends to let them know, like, you know, he's on his way, and then he's deciding what other snack he wants to get. A lady is looking at she's the end of her working day. She's looking at what alcohol she wants to buy. She steps backward and trips over him. His crisp packet goes flying across the floor that he's just selected, and immediately the conclusion is that he must have been stealing, and he must have somehow hurt this white woman, and he is just immediately aggressively beaten for on the face of it trying to steal a packet of crisps, but he wasn't even doing that. So the punishment is so much bigger than the suspected crime, and that's the bit that is really focused on, along with the concept of, you know, you can be judged for the level of where your trousers are, the length of your hair, what you looked like, and it has this kind of like conflict not only kind of in the white community of well, it can't be, because that's not the nature of the person. We know he has a hard job, we can't judge, we don't know the full story, but we've seen what happened, and yes, I hate to think that someone I know did that, but we've just seen him do it, and that's awful, and we need to stop this. But how do I kind of connect that with, you know, feeling like I'm being disloyal to someone that I know in my life who has helped me? So you've got that conflict on, I suppose, like the white community. Then in the black community, you've got the conflict of constantly feeling judged and suppressed, and on one side, people should have the right to have their hair any length, their trousers at whatever feels cool for them, you know, wearing whatever clothes they want to wear without being mistaken for a criminal or a drug dealer. But on the other side, you've got some members of the older generation who say you need to make sure you look smart, you look presentable, you are representing black people, you will give us a bad name, this is what you must present. Was that how you're presenting? And it just made me think of, it's so parallel to the victim blaming of people who are sexual assaulted. Mainly women. Were you wearing a short skirt? Were you drunk? And it's like, were you at fault? did you do that? Did you put your hands up in the air? Did you resist? You're not supposed to do that. And it's like, again, that shouldn't be the problem. The problem should be someone has been unjust. But it's almost like they're so used to this being the norm that their protection they have is like, but then you were stupid for not doing what we've taught you. And that just blew my mind, just seeing like that concept as well. And again, coming from a white person without having to even think about that, I've read a certain amount of things, which is where I've had a certain amount of knowledge from books and things I've read and from hearing other people's stories. But even then, like the way they were talking about it made me think of how there's such a parallel of all victim blaming. Like, was it your fault? Did you say something that was going to make people pick on you and bully you? Did you say something that puts you in danger? Where it's like, no, this is not you. This was other people making choices to be aggressive, to be judgmental. And that is where, as a society, we should be focusing our attention, not on the victim and what signals was the victim giving off. And I just thought that was just beautifully presented through different characters, through an explanation of different characters. And that goes on, like the more you read the story, the more these kind of conflicting things comes out, and you can see them struggling with it. You can see both different protagonists struggling with what choice do they make. So on one hand, you've got Rashad, who has been brutally beaten, so naturally has trauma from that, along with, does he feel brave enough to become the poster figure? Because he knows this isn't about him. Yes, his immediate family and friends care about him, but ultimately this is another example of how Black people are being systematically suppressed, and he knows he's going to become a symbol. He knows he's going to become a figurehead. This is not an isolated incident. But he knows he's going to become the poster boy, and he's like, do I want that? Do I want that for me? Can he feel like he can step up to be the rallying point for people to say enough is enough, this needs to stop? So that's the journey he's exploring. On the other side, we've got Quinn working out how this happened and working out and kind of coming to terms with the fact that he has bought into being systematically racist. He has judged, or maybe there must have been something, because I know this guy, and exploring how he feels having seen someone that he knew, that he saw as an older brother, being really aggressive and violent to someone that he could not see fighting back. And that also terrified him as well. Like, it's made him look at him in a new light, but it's made him question, like, what does it mean to be loyal? What does it mean to stand up for justice and things? And he's got people on one side telling him one thing and people on the other side telling him the other, and he needs to decide where to fit in. He doesn't want to get involved, and then exploring what that means by not being involved. It's not his problem, he just saw it, but what does it mean to walk away? Is walking away just as bad? Have you already taken a stand by walking away and not being involved? And all of those things kind of come into play, and the way it's explored, I think, is just done really, really well. And I kind of mentioned earlier about how the school handled this. So obviously it's something that has upset a lot of people in the school, and they have emotions and feel a certain way. But you've got things like the basketball coach. So the boiling point is all the boys involved in this. So the friends of Rashad and the younger brother of the perpetrator, who's known as Guzzo, they're in the same basketball team. So Guzzo is Quinn's friend. Him and a few other boys that are all friends are on the same basketball team as Rashad and some of his friends. And that becomes kind of like a focal point of, can we leave this to focus on what we need to do as a basketball team? And the coach won't let them bring it to the court. He makes them leave it outside, but can it be left outside? That's something else that's explored. And other teachers have been told not to kind of antagonize the situation. Like, people are upset, people are angry, but we don't want to make it worse. So let's just pretend it's not there and just don't talk about it. That's a much better way to go about things. Whereas some teachers feel very, very strongly that no, this is important. Children need to be able to talk about this. They need a space to talk about it. It can't just be pushed under the carpet. And, you know, staff who have taught the child are visibly upset by it all as well. So it's really interesting to see all of that come out. In terms of the ending, again, I'm not going to full on spoil it. But I do want to talk about how the kind of feeling it gave me. So I wasn't sure how you end this, and the way it was done just absolutely suited the purpose of this book and the theme of this book and how it's done. It was just beautifully done. I want to read, the final thing I want to do is I want to read another couple of bits from here, and this is like at the beginning and end of the book. So it's like the bookends of it. So the way the book is set up is generally you have a Rashad chapter, you have a Quinn chapter, you have a Rashad chapter, you have a Quinn chapter. And then at the end, you have a merging of the Rashad and Quinn in the same thing. So you've got bits of thoughts from each of their heads kind of at the end. And I just like how that was done overall. There are some wonderful kind of like secondary characters that you kind of meet in here, and just some other ways of dealing with it that I've just really enjoyed. But I do just want to give you some more words. So again, in this illustrated book, I like that we have the crisp packet at the beginning and the end of the book, because that is like quite symbolic of the incident. And then the story starts like this and ends like this. So it starts with zoom in and then it ends with zoom out. And I'm going to read both. So again, if you don't want to know, toddle off. Zoom in more, a little more. A boy, grainy, face down on the pavement. A man above him, fists raining like stones. Howling, lights and sirens. Blood on the street. The boy is still moving, and then he is not. And then the end of the book. Zoom out more, a little more. The plaza flooded with bodies, but no blood. No lights and sirens, just crackling voices, names rising to the sky. In the centre of it all, the boy who remains and the boy beside him. Two boys in focus, two boys clear, a new tomorrow, an arm's length away. I just really liked how that was done. Thank you so much. This was supposed to be a short video about one book, but clearly as we know, I cannot stop talking. I would love to hear if you have read All American Boys, if you have read any other books dealing with the same topics in All American Boys that you can recommend to me, because I did really enjoy the themes of this book. If you're doing the banned book challenge, let me know how it's going. I would love to hear, because you know I love a chat. Happy reading, everyone.